Welcome to Windows on the World. Join us live every Sunday, 8 p.m. UK time, windowsontheworld.net, and do check out the archive and program stream on the website. Welcome to Windows on the World. This particular show is a follow-on from something you can find in the archive. It's actually on the homepage at windowsontheworld.net, and it's a follow-up to a show we did called The Force They Fear. We're going to go a bit further into looking at this particular force, this mysterious force, which was usurped and named through Freemasonry. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the battle between the real and the fake. This is extremely important in the present times because we're looking at the closing of this particular plan. And those who have fearlessness and truth are the people who the imitators fear. There is a battle between the real and the fake, the truth and the deception. The deception has infiltrated all, and the real is now the occultism hidden by a barrage of lies. Okay, so the mysterious force to counter the real mystery, which was the mystery of the early followers of the Way, the early version of Christianity. Its enemies stated, with the will of God, we will blot them from the earth one by one, and that battle still continues today. They said, thus we will escape the danger of the teachings of the impostor. They were petrified around the time of 43 AD. We're going to get into that during this show. Petrified of the power of the truth of the people who called themselves followers of the Way, the early Christians. It says in this publication we're going to get into, their terrible oath was to keep the secret and kill the followers of the one they called the impostor, Jesus, and all his followers. In turn, those who failed to keep the oath were killed themselves. And the mysterious force of these followers of what was called the Way usurped and put fear into the false, the deceivers, the followers of Lucifer. This show revisits and expands upon this previous show called The Force They Fear. We're going to be looking at this book, and it's called The Dissipation of Darkness by an author known as G.S. Lawrence, and it describes the content of an original Hebrew manuscript owned by Mr. Lawrence that was translated into Arabic. Mr. Lawrence was the last heir of one of the 9 founders of the association called the Mysterious Force, which later became known as Freemasonry. This mysterious force, where Moab, a Pharisee, a counselor of Herod Agrippa, and the grandson of Herod, was actually the founder. So Moab was the founder of the mysterious force in 43 AD. It was Moab and 7 others who were Pharisees who believed and practiced Babylonian magic and who answered to demonic beings who in turn answered to Satan. They founded a secret society of 9 unknown men who were called Elders of Zion. Well, it is said in modern Freemasonry that it was created in 1717 when its Grand Lodge of England was established. It was also generally believed that it was someone called Dr. James Anderson who wrote its new constitutions. After this date, of course, Freemasonry went back to the 1200s, and some people say it started in the 1300s. Then again, we get all sorts of allegory and waffle that it started much earlier. But this book reveals that indeed the Freemasonry of today and its roots were from this time of King Herod. Moreover, few people, including most of its members, actually know that its origin is 2,000 years old. Indeed, as far as we know, none of the current books on Freemasonry traces Freemasonry to its true origin. G.S. Lawrence, the author of this book, The Dissipation of Darkness, states that ancient Masonry was established by King Herod Agrippa to counter the effect of Jesus Christ's ministry. Jonas James Lawrence was his name, 1775 to 1825 when he died. And his death was, again, a bit of a mystery, because his family members thought that it was because of his revelations in this book that he was indeed killed. But he was the great-grandfather of G.S. Lawrence, and he predicted even before the birth of communism that this theory, brought of course by Karl Marx in 1848, the Communist Manifesto, that this new masonry would give birth to this world socialism. It was all predicted. That's what's so fascinating about this book. But not only that, all the corrupt descendant organizations, it said, will be the daughters and granddaughters of this Masonic cult. And this is Jonas in his own words. This is Jonas James Lawrence, the author. Know, my son, that the new masonry, responding to the demands of the enemy of humanity and fulfilling orders to increase the daughters of corruption, gave birth to socialism. This granddaughter came to be evil, worse than earlier evils. Well, of course, we can always look further, because when we look at the original protocols, which were named and put out in the late 1800s, the actual protocols of world revolution, they came out of Russia. So did this document. This person known as G.S. Lawrence was actually Russian. Okay, so basically we're going to have some quotes from this book and from the followers of this cult, which was to attempt to usurp and destroy everything to do with this new emergent religion, when it became a religion, but it was originally called the Way. I predict to you, Samuel, that all these creatures will grow and give birth by satanic spouses to all other creatures of wickedness, corruption and destruction. They will be multiplied, and they will scatter their seeds over all the earth, corrupting it, and how poisonous will be their fruits. Each one of these creatures will form a party, and each party will look out for the interests of its mother, aggravating the evils of confusion, civilization, disappearing, eliminating religion, and degenerating education. So everything that these people said was going to happen when this book came out, which was the result of families involved in this cult for nearly 2,000 years, well, we can see that all of these principles are in action today. It says, then the trumpets of grief and disaster will blow. This prophecy of mine will be fulfilled and will have a great echo. Our descendants will see infernal generations. Men will remember me after my death. They will testify to this opinion of mine, that all the corrupt descendants will be daughters and granddaughters of Mother Masonry. Okay, let's get into this book, The Dissipation of Darkness. It says, it is a warning. This history exposes the origin of Freemasonry, the mysterious force, as the origin of the kingdom of the Antichrist. King Herod designated Hiram Abiud, founder of the mysterious force, as master instead of Jesus. This Hiram was then named Hiram Abiff, and anyone familiar with Freemasonry will know all about Hiram Abiff, the architect of the Temple of Solomon. And basically, they called him Hiram Abiff to obfuscate the truth. Masons were to be deliberately deceived. The Masons, who for 19 centuries have not known the origin or the past of their own association. A document in Hebrew passed down to G.S. Lawrence and shared with a scholar called Awad Khoury, translated the work from French to Arabic. It stated, to fellows of the Brotherhood, every person, when he enters an association, is interested in knowing its origin and past. The document which reveals the true history of Freemasonry is credible, as like other documents we have featured, makes perfectly clear the intentions and how today the clear outcomes have come to pass, which indicate its credibility and for the sake of truth should be taken seriously. So a document passed down through generations from an original 9 who were in possession of the secret, which originated on the 24th of June 43 AD. The last of the living heirs to the manuscript was G.S. Lawrence, known as James Lawrence. And Awad Khoury, a Lebanese scholar, passed it on. The document was called Dissipation of the Darkness. It starts with this warning about this exposition of the kingdom of the Antichrist. In 43 AD, King Herod designated Hiram Abiud. And yes, this Hiram Abiff was actually what the Freemasons later came to tell everybody was the architect of the Temple of Solomon. So Awad Khoury, after finding this out, sent letters to London, Paris, New York, Cairo, Berlin, Madrid and Rome, obtaining the following replies about the history of Freemasonry. And this is from the prestigious newspaper El Muqaddim. The oldest historical evidence of the history of Masonry dates, according to some, from 1217, according to others from 1390. Ancient Masonic authors claim that Masonry dates from the era of Moses. We have no confirmation of this. Our cordial greetings. Okay, so the official story in England is that Freemasonry originated at the Goose and Gridiron pub in London on the 24th of June 1717. This is from the Egyptian National Grand Orient, who G.S. Lawrence also wrote to, through his author and translator, Awad Khoury. We do not possess any confirmation of the date of the foundation of Masonry. The only thing we know is that in the year 1917, a booklet was published entitled 2 Centuries of Freemasonry. Knowing through later references that this booklet is one of the most important documents on which Masons depend, it was, of course, maligned, and we're going to get into what happened to people who actually went against the oaths which were taken to keep all of this a secret. So, again, let's get back to what was said about the origins of Freemasonry. Awad Khoury found it in the Library of International Masonic Affairs in Newcastle, and basically it was saying that the history of Freemasonry is not actually really known. And from the Grand Orient in London, it said, we lack certain data concerning the date of the foundation of Masonry. We do know that it already existed in the year 1717. So another obfuscation and nowhere near to the truth, which is where this document really comes in. And from the rest of the cities that were mentioned at the beginning here, he received no reply whatsoever, and he deduced that their silence indicated their ignorance concerning the mystery. So, this document, the Dissipation of Darkness, its aims were to dissipate the darkness that for 19 centuries has enveloped a humanity that is wavering in doubt, to reveal this mystery to the eyes of men, to alert them before this cruel danger. The book contains the biographies and agreement of Khoury and Lawrence. It says the signers below. Mr. Lawrence George Samuel Lawrence, Russian travelling merchant at present of Rio de Janeiro, and Mr. Awad Khoury of Lebanon near Beirut, Syria, at present a merchant in Rio de Janeiro, and charged with the private affairs of His Excellency Dr. Prudente de Moraes, President of the Republic of Brazil. The following has been agreed upon, that Mr. Lawrence, last heir and sole proprietor of the history, the mysterious force, this ancient Hebrew manuscript, says, my father and grandparents who have bequeathed this history apparently have not considered that the Arabic and Turkish languages are two rich and important languages, and that Arabia and Turkey are two immense countries, and in all their regions Freemasonry is now widespread. Therefore, I have considered it necessary to propagate our history, mentioned above in said countries, translated to Arabic and later to Turkish, so that it will be published there and known as much as possible by those who speak and understand these languages. That was dated 1897, 12th of August, in Rio de Janeiro, and signed by the two authors, G.S. Lawrence and Howard Corey. And basically, this is at the beginning of the book. It's a very intriguing read. So basically, when we're talking about Masons and non-Masons, the book states that it divides these investigators into three groups. First, these are the people who look into Freemasonry, of course. Firstly, the historians who spend their days and nights in study and reading, trying in vain to come to know the secret of the true history of the foundation of Masonry. Second, the learned authors who try to establish something about the secret, all in vain, yet they continue with their studies without having reached their goal. And isn't this just true? Because how much allegorical waffle and nonsense and time-wasting energy harvesting has been written about this cult, when in fact its sole aim was to destroy the righteous and this religion known as the Way, which for 2,000 years they have been trying to destroy. Look what the United Nations is trying to do today. Exactly the same thing. There is no other nation in the world that they want to undermine and destroy. Quite fascinating. So, okay, the learned authors who try to establish something about the secret, all in vain, yet they continue with their studies without having reached their goal. Of course. Thirdly, the associates and their collaborators who have not gotten anywhere in spite of their efforts. It is deplorable. All the investigations come to nothing. They have not achieved any result. The number of those investigations from the foundation of the association up to our days, well, the end of the 19th century, can be estimated in the hundreds of thousands. The letter says, I received these truths from my father, who in turn received them from his father, and he from his father, retrospectively to the origin of the lineage, the 9 founders in the year 43 AD. The book progresses with the revelation that the sole purpose of Freemasonry was and always has been to destroy its arch enemy Christianity, and it reinforces this through the text, and it gives many examples of what was actually said through the ages by the people who were in possession of what they called the mysterious force, which was actually to counter the real mysterious force of this early movement. We are talking here of the early followers of Jesus, himself a figure they have ever since hated and feared. Now that's the interesting thing. Where is this neurosis and fear coming from? Well, it's coming from the power of this early religion. And of course, we're talking about management systems here. We're talking about the way things work on the planet at the moment. So it doesn't really matter whether you are of a religious persuasion or not. This is the system within which they are working, which is why I'm making a show about it, because what we need to find are the real solutions to things. And that's what my role as a researcher has been, and everything I've put out has been moving in this sort of direction. So as we've covered pretty much everything, the way that the system is actually imposed, I think it's quite useful to go back and look at this historical document, which is fascinating and resonates with truth. But their hatred comes from fear. Yes, a fear of the power of direct and simple truth, which usurps low magic, spells and gematria. The dissipation of darkness goes into how the document was passed down. Joseph Levy is one of the renewers of this association. He was an heir of the history from his ancient ancestors, who in turn inherited it from Moab Levy, who was one of the 9 founders of this organization known as the Mysterious Force, which later became known as Freemasonry. Yes, it says it was our ancestor Joseph who conceived the idea of changing the name of the association, the Mysterious Force, to Freemasonry, and of reforming the statutes. This document of Russian origin through G.S. Lawrence, as was the Protocols of World Power, came out in the 1800s, and so did this document. This was actually revealed in the 1800s, so we can see why there was an attack on Russia through the Bolsheviks. All of this stuff starts to make sense. The Protocols of World Revolution, the revolutionary spirit, all came from this need to wipe out the followers of righteousness and truth. Why were they so scared of them if their power was so strong and resolute? That's the question, and that's what makes this so interesting. So, the mysterious force described by King Herod Agrippa and his chief architect, Hiram Abiud, was the force which came from these early followers. These early followers of what was called the Way seemed to be immune to the lies and low magic dispensed by those who hid behind a religion which has become known as Judaism. It has become something which worked inside this religion, which was merely a front, a container for those whose God is Lucifer, and were in direct opposition to those who followed the Way, the radical new truth which had a power to override the Luciferians, and their aim was to subjugate the people of all lands in the world through deception and infiltration. Only one thing stood in their path, and that was those who followed this mysterious force. Ever since, the role of Freemasonry has been to subjugate and destroy this religion. We're not talking about the later universal church or any other, but the pure truth and directness of that early radical teaching, which aligned with a power that rendered the Luciferians powerless. Well, the book gives the lineage of the descendants up to G.S. Lawrence, and it's very, very fascinating. So we'll now mention the names of some of the founders. First, I think we've already mentioned some of these. King Agrippa, the founder and first president. Second, Hiram Abiud, the one who conceived the idea of founding the association. Third, Moab Levi, the first ancestor from the time of creation of the mysterious force. The Masons, observing the general mistrust towards their association, created a false front, establishing common associations with other names, but with the same ends to which they have joined those people, fearful of their name, for the purpose of snaring men and their money, thus fortifying Masonry and their lineage. So practically speaking, King Herod was the founder, and in homage to him, he called the followers, the mysterious ones, by the name Sons of the Widow, which is, of course, a Freemasonic term. This pseudonym is used by them up to the present. This Hiram, though, of course, is not Hiram Abiff, the ancient Syrian architect who built the Temple of Solomon, as some of the mysterious ones and their later successors, the Masons, believed. So the Masons themselves are dupes, and willing dupes, because they have to take an oath, and all of this is about oaths. So these people who set up this organization took oaths which meant that if they divulged anything of this plan, they would be killed. And that is the same way that Freemasonry operates up until today. So here we see the deception running through the degrees of Masonry, up until Master Mason, that of the builder of the mythical, because it has never been found, of course. The Temple of Solomon, that is. This is what it's all about. Master Mason, when they rise from the coffin and join the Brotherhood, they cannot go back to their old lives, and they are forever property of this organization. The whole of Masonry is a deception to those who are inducted. They are merely agents of differing degrees who have different roles in the plan of the great architect, the false god Lucifer. So now let's get into something else which is quite important. Lucifer, also known as Samael, son of the widow, as he is believed by the Brotherhood to have had intercourse with Eve before Adam, and produced the semi-divine Cain, whose brothers, the Freemasons, symbolized by fire. And these brotherhood control the sons of Set and the sons of Abel, who represent water. The later Rosicrucians were another organization created to further the mysterious force through Kabbalah. The sons of Abel and Set are the administrators and priests that serve the Luciferians, the sons of Cain. But the dissipation of darkness states, here you have the enumeration of the successive heirs of this history from the renewal of the association, 1716 to 1717 down to us, and that is the family of G.S. Lawrence, the author. The ancestor renewer, Joseph Levy, lacking the talents of a historian, copied synthetically with the collaboration of Abraham Abiud, the two manuscripts inherited by him and that of his own respective ancestors from the year 43 after the impostor Jesus. That's a quote from the book. So basically here we start to see the lineage, and it goes into great detail about this lineage, and we haven't got time to get into all that. So 43 AD was the year of the foundation of this association. They gave it that name, the mysterious force, as they believed the force was born with it and would remain concealed in it, growing little by little until the time of its revelation. At that time it had two goals. The first, to impede the apostolate of Jesus' men and to combat their preaching. The second, to preserve political influence. But that force did not grow so much due to its terrible name. It prospered for a while within its magical occultism and disappeared. Who at its innermost core would ever reveal this malevolent secret? No one, because whoever did so paid with his life. Well, that is why Freemasons are under penalty of death if they go against their brothers in the lodge, previously known as the Temple. And that is also revealed in the book. So when Freemasonic places of meeting became lodges, it was after they were previously known as the Temple. And this was, of course, what they were known at the time the mysterious force was incorporated by Herod Agrippa and Hiram Abiud. So let's get back to what the book says. For the least contradiction or for the slightest doubt, a member was condemned to death. A tribunal of 3 judges determined the sentence of the accused, and in the great number of cases by a simple rumour concerning his conduct. So they were kept in abject fear, and they were frightened to say anything. The accused knew the accusation and the sentence at the moment of their assassination. So when this was carried out, they would be told what they had done wrong before they were killed. The book says that savagery and all its method and significance instilled in that strict law has its principal purpose with the combating of Jesus' men and the opposition of their preaching. Another very important goal existed: to fortify the Luciferian element and to return the world to its rule. According to the very words of some ancient heirs of the mysterious way, the mysterious force, one of them pertains to the heir successor Haron Levi at the end of the 3rd century after the impostor Jesus. So we have quotes in this book which is worth actually reading. Another text is recorded at the beginning of the 7th century after the impostor Muhammad, founder of the Muhammad religion, who claimed to prophecy, as did the impostor Jesus. So basically, when Islam emerged, it was again considered to be an enemy of the Brotherhood. So this text pertains to Levi Moses Levi, and that is recorded in this book, and it manifests the great disorder that the appearance of Muhammad caused among the mysterious ones themselves, and the irrepressible hate towards his men and followers. So, with the emergence of Islam, the imitators and the mysterious force had a new enemy. Well, the book concludes that all those texts coincide in that the principal purpose of the mother, the ancient Freemasonry, is to annihilate Christianity, to destroy its foundations, and to elevate the prestige of the Luciferian religion. Today, in spite of its evolution, it preserves the same purpose, so nothing has changed in 2,000 years, according to this document. So knowing this simple fact puts the whole thing into perspective. Well, from June 24th, 1717, the association suffered important evolutions and changed its name. It changed its name, and it says, this is a comment from the book, that law of such terrible occultism of the mysterious force still exists in Freemasonry. In it, the son enters as a robber without the knowledge of his parents. He eats, drinks, sleeps with them under the same roof, while he is their political and religious enemy. So this describes the absolute infiltration which we've talked about for so long. The infiltration of everything with this method, this plan to destroy any followers who have or may be perceived to have this mysterious force which put them into such fear as to respond with this plan. Okay, this is of course what is happening today. The infiltration of every level of public life by this same principle is visible to all who have any ability to see and think. Let's get back to the book. Extremist liberty was what crushed educational order. It corrupted the human community and ignited the fire of political passion in every territory. From it were born the sources of prostitution and immorality. Masonry, wanting to appropriate to itself the first fruits of the words, liberty, fraternity, and equality, which of course are the words that they usurped, which are still used today, and are the words of sustainable development. Yes, these same principles are in force today. And these words, of course, were originated by Christ himself, who founded with them the three pillars to liberate the slave from his slavery, because men are all brothers in humanity, being sons of a single Father, and they are all equal in rights and justice. The book carries on. Christ wanted to preserve the prestige of these three words and not leave them to the disposition of those with evil intentions and the extremists who explain them for their own purposes. After reading this history and knowing all the hate unleashed against the two religions, the Christian and the Muslim, the fact that it was solely Judaic was confirmed to me, because to the present it has not been heard that Masonry combats this branch of Judaic Luciferian religion. The Masons, observing the general mistrust towards their association, create a false front, establishing common associations with other names, but with the same ends to which they have joined those people fearful of their name. Well, this describes this global infiltration process through the Sustainable Development Goals. It's just another front for the same thing. The main purpose, of course, is of snaring men and their money, thus fortifying Masonry. The association of Freemasonry is the same association as the mysterious force or ancient Masonry, laicism being derived from it. Masonry and laicism, then, descend from the association, the mysterious force. Well, laicism is a political system characterized by the exclusion of ecclesiastical control and influence, and it was first known around the 1900s. So when we look at this long term, again, we can see no change in the plans. It says that know that every event contrary to religion has its origin in Masonry. Every event contrary to religion has its origin in Masonry. by the monstrous exaggeration of the interpretation of the words liberty, equality, fraternity, the reins of human morals were loosened. It was Masonry that diffused disobedience to their duties in women with the purpose of spreading extremism, corruption and prostitution. These are the purposes of the mysterious force and its daughter Masonry. Any contact with a Mason inspires in us in one way or another, if not, the despising of religion and coldness towards it. Here is the example. In the countries where Masons abound, spirituality, honour and virtues diminish. It is a frightening danger that threatens humanity. The consequences will be disastrous for your daughters and sons and for the entire world, says this book, which was written to warn future generations, but has only been passed around in the hands of a few. So, the mysterious force that was founded in the year 43 AD and its daughter modern Masonry was born in the year 1717, according to the Freemasons themselves. And, of course, as we've said earlier in the show, there are other dates which come up from 1200 to 1390. So the real force, though, is still available to those who are in tune with it. So what we see here is a tapestry of lies and deception to cover up the real origins of Freemasonry. So the Grand Lodge in London on Great Queen Street and its inscription of 1717, which refers to allegedly the first meeting of Freemasons in London at the Goose and Gridiron pub, is a cover story, just like everything with this organisation. It deceives its followers, it indoctrinates them, and they become the useful tools and agents of the plan. Nothing more to it than that, really. So the real force, of course, is still available to those who are in tune with it. The imitator cannot usurp the original power, and that is the purpose of this show. That is why only those who have not been corrupted by anything to do with the imitators and their system are the only ones capable of resisting and overturning the deceivers. Okay, I've got some quotes here, but I'm going to save them for another episode. And I'm going to follow this show up. Now I'm back online more consistently. Quite ironically, my computer went down today. So I'm broadcasting from a much smaller device. I hope it sounds okay. Everything is up and running and should be back in its original form by the next show. Do look out for other broadcasts. I'm going to do some more shows on this subject because it's so fascinating, and I hope that was a good introduction to this volume. We have actually reported on this mysterious force, the force they fear. You can look at that in the archive. But basically, it's about one thing and one thing only: the real inner strength and truth which was perpetuated and put in motion by the early followers of the way is available to all. Everything from that time onwards, from 43 AD, appears to have been to usurp and destroy it, and we can see the results of that. People don't know who they are disingenuous in their beliefs, and indeed, the whole agenda is to take away this deep integrity which was apparent and so feared by those who wished to usurp and control the lives of all on the planet. So, I will be back soon on Windows on the World. I hope you've heard this out there. And do keep in touch through the website info@windowsontheworld.net. Thanks very much, everybody, and good night.